Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Empowering Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm Glenn Harper.
Julie Smith.
What's going on, Julie?
Well, it's back to school.
Oh, it's the best.
Not to date the podcast, but all the kids are back in school, which means we don't stop running until next May, I think.
That's our rule. That's part of the deal. That's a package deal. It's all good. Well, we're having a great time with our podcast today. We have to do it a little bit later in the day than normally, bright and early, because our guest has been so gracious to come join us from the West Coast. So we had to go a little bit later. So thank you for that.
Which means we don't have any coffee. So we're currently sharing a bottle of water.
We don't know what to do with our hands. We're used to drinking, but it's all good. We'll figure this thing out. Well, let me do a nice introduction. I'd like to introduce a fellow entrepreneur, Tahmina Watson, founder of Watson Immigration Law. She's a member of the Forbes Business Council, host of Tahmina's Talks Immigration podcast, author of the Startup Visa, and CEO of Pinky's Shoe Bags. Last but not least, she doesn't look like she would be in this classification based on age, but she is way deep into the bird watching and bird photography. We will delve into all these things and see what makes Tahmina tick and why she has this unbridled passion to be involved in everything. Tahmina is the person you call when you get lucky in the immigration lottery and your number is called. She will take that new immigrant citizen and show them how to become the best version of themselves by being an entrepreneur, which, if any of us can think about it, would be next to impossible to know what to do if we became a citizen of another country and wanted to run a business. Impossible. Her expertise is turnkey as her satisfaction comes from helping others get the opportunity that she received many, many years ago. Allegedly, she says she enjoys her free time in nature, but I think we can all agree that in her free time, it is about quality, not quantity of time, as she has a mission to serve her clients. Apparently, immigration is a controversial these days, and we cannot wait to jump in and discuss some different perspectives. Sit back and enjoy the ride as we pick Tahmina's brain. Thanks, Tahmina, for being on our show.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for such a beautiful introduction. I'm so grateful.
We have to give him a few minutes to catch his breath after that one.
I don't put the commas in, so I just keep talking. No, we on this podcast, we love talking to people, what makes them tick, how they got where they got, what is it that they do, and what ultimately is their vision and purpose and all those things. And there's a lot of controversial content out there on you, just a boatload, but ultimately, I'm totally kidding. We're trying to figure out, where did you come from? Where did you get here? And it says you grew up in London. Is that true?
That is true. Yes.
Born and raised there?
That's correct. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, you don't have a very London type accent. So what's going on with that? Did you get converted when you moved to America or what?
So this is my 21st year in the United States. I was born in the UK. And then for a few years, I did live in Bangladesh. That's where my parents had immigrated from. And then I had a sleepless in Seattle moment when I met my husband. I was here on vacation, and I had a blind date set up, and then it was long distance, and eventually I got married and I moved here. And this is my 21st year of being married, 21st year of being in the United States, and 20th year of being an immigration lawyer.
Wait, this is just right on par for what's happening in today's world. I know Glenn wants to start with your childhood, so he'll go back. But what do you think about Meghan and Harry moving back?
I have no idea what to think about that, to be honest, because, it's so interesting that I was a young kid when Harry was born and William were born, and Diana, I remember being 7 or 8 years old when Diana's wedding was live on television. It was so surreal to see Harry move to the US because the royal family doesn't move here. I don't know what to think of it. I think it's going to unfold in real time. I think when I saw the headlines yesterday, I thought, what on earth, how is she going to make it there? But we'll see. We'll all see in real time.
This is why I'm not allowed to be in charge of the podcast direction. So I'll hand it back over.
No, that's a great question. And again, people that are in England, they follow this stuff. Like, this is a big thing.
I follow this stuff. What do you mean?
Yeah. But U.S. immigration lawyers follow this stuff too, right? Because it's been around in a lot of our forums. That's how I got the breaking news that now he's moving, and then they're like, what's his immigration status? What happened here? So there's many different angles to one particular family, and who knows? We'll see.
We'll see. Well, so let's go back a little, because again, I'd like to get to know a guest a little bit. So your parents, did they immigrate to England at some point?
Yes, my dad had immigrated in the 60s, and when he got married to my mum moved to London in the 70s, and then in the 80s the whole family moved to Bangladesh for a little while, and then in the 90s we came back, and then I continued my education and became a barrister, one of those trial lawyers who wears a wig and gown.
Good.
And that was from a little girl. I mean, my first memory was I wanted to be a barrister. I didn't, that's all I wanted to be, a trial lawyer with a wig and gown. My father was one too, so that's where my inspiration came from. But then I moved to the United States, and I had to restart my career and think about what I wanted to do. And immigration kept following me as a path, but immigration was the only thing I didn't want to do. If there was one thing on my list that I didn't want to do, it was immigration law. I grew up watching my father practice immigration law. And in the olden days, immigration law was very much a community thing to do. It wasn't the sexy thing to do, And it was a lot of asylum as well. And in my mind, I thought immigration law was only asylum work. And I didn't want to have my heartstrings just pulled on every day. It's such it can be tragic. It's very heavy. And when I moved here, as I mentioned, I moved here 21 years ago, I had to study for the bar again, and I had to think about what am I going to practice. And with a UK law degree, I could be practicing a federal area of law anywhere in the country, but I didn't understand. America had 50 states, 50 different, legal systems. And immigration is a federal area of law, which means you can practice it anywhere. And as you mentioned at the top of the hour, I live on the West Coast in Seattle. And I could only take the New York bar or the Californian bar with my background. So I took the New York bar, but that limited me in the areas of law I could practice. And immigration law kept following me. And the fifth time I surrendered, I said, okay, universe, I'll just do this for, a little while, and then I'll do something else. And honest to God, the first day of immigration, I said, why am I fighting this? If you don't want to practice asylum law, you don't have to touch an asylum case. And I very quickly learned that I jive with people who are brilliant entrepreneurs. And, the savviness that comes with it, the drive that comes with it, the complexity of immigration law that is about entrepreneurship in many ways. I had a natural knack for it. And here I am 21 years later.
Was your dad, was he employed? Was he self-employed, or did he work for a firm?
Oh, good question. He was a barrister. And in the UK, barristers are self-employed.
Self-employed. So did he give you a look that said, after you did this, I told you so? Did he say that? Or no? As a good dad would have said?
No, actually, my dad was actually a little upset that I was moving to another country because he wanted me to practice with him. And it took him a little while to get used to the fact that I wouldn't be with him. But he was very proud. He's very proud of my husband. My mother was definitely the woman behind the man and me. And, it was interesting. But yeah, he was very proud that I followed his footsteps.
He's definitely not mad that you are in law in the U.S. He's mad probably that his daughter got swept up by some other man. And so that's what he's mad about. He's not mad that you're doing law in the U.S. So that's too funny. Go ahead, Jim.
You have any brothers and sisters?
I do. I have two siblings, and they're in the UK.
And are they following in your dad's footsteps, or did they do something completely different?
Very different. They didn't want to be like me, for sure. Definitely didn't want to follow their big sisters doing this, and let's do something different.
So you're the oldest.
I am the oldest.
Okay, there you have it. Well, that explains everything. Okay. And the reason I do this is because we can profile everybody, and there's a certain fact pattern that always happens.
I love it.
It's just neat that this is going on. So, there's two things that happen when people are, that we kind of see when they become an entrepreneur. One of those things is somebody was influential to show them that, hey, it's risky, but it's exciting and fun, and there's a lot of reward. Or that's the one path, or you go work in the steady job in the factory and do the thing, right? Or in the office and you do the thing. Nothing's wrong with either one of them. So it sounds like the only thing you knew was watching your dad be self-employed, right? So you never knew really anything different. Is that
well, actually, I didn't really know if I was going to be self-employed or not. When you go to law school, you're not necessarily learning about business. It's a big problem. And I mean, these days, you probably have seen there are coaches everywhere for lawyers. But 21 years ago, that was not the case. The influential person in my life to become an entrepreneur was actually my husband. My husband is an incredible human being, just loves me to bits. And when I was coming into a new country, trying to find my feet again, I initially was working with somebody and it wasn't going well. But my husband said to me, why don't you just try something on your own? And if you fail, I will still love you. And those were the words that got me into my own firm. And here I am.
So I have to ask
awesome.
too, where did you meet your husband on vacation?
In Seattle. I had a sleepless in Seattle moment where
literally sleepless in Seattle. So I was just thinking that was yeah. Okay.
Legit.
Yeah. We had some family friends who brought us together. And my mom's sister and his colleagues brought us together.
Okay.
Well, that's the best thing ever. So ultimately, some entrepreneurs, they look back and reflect and they say, since I was 8 or 10, I was doing this or saw a family member, a mentor doing this entrepreneur thing. I was curious about it. And other times it just comes out of nowhere. So you weren't basically coached per se or led down the path where your dad's like saying, hey, you really should become an entrepreneur like I am. Well, he was more like, hey, you figure life out. We'll see how that goes. Or was he more like, hey, you really should go do this?
It was more like be a lawyer.
Just be a lawyer on your own.
Be a lawyer. But the legal system in the UK is actually pretty different from what it is here. The education system, how you practice law. And in the UK, there are two distinct pathways. One is being a trial lawyer or a barrister, or a transactional lawyer, a solicitor. And a solicitor can be employed in a law firm, or they could have their own law firm and be an entrepreneur. But barristers typically will be under one umbrella called chambers, and they would all be self-employed. And so to me, I did not necessarily understand that as such. That was not necessarily the goal. The goal was to be a lawyer. My parents had a dream. I had a dream. How that was going to unfold, obviously we're seeing now, but the goal was to be a barrister, and the self-employment wasn't necessarily the issue or the focus. It was more how to practice law.
Got it. It's sort of like when you're an accountant.
Exactly.
You love
yes.
it. You can be
so
governmental.
The one
private,
thing I never
public.
wanted to do, numbers.
I'm just kidding. I do that for her because she gets a kick out of it. Okay, so
wait, I have a question. I want to know. So you talked about how immigration just kept hitting you in the face as you were going through, maybe I want to do this, maybe I want to do this. You started out with the New York bar. Walk me through some of the things that you did that, and then like highlight what was the immigration that was hitting you in the face as you kind of walked these steps to get to where you are.
So first I moved to a new country, so I had to go through immigration myself. And then I had to take the bar exams, but that also was a challenge because I had been studying forever and I had just started working in the UK as a, very young barrister doing all the menial tasks that a newcomer does. But I had finished my studies, so I was not going to go to law school again. And when I kept calling, advisors about how to become a lawyer in another country, I kept being guided to go to law school again. And I was like, no, thank you. That's not happening. And so when I learned that I could take the bar exams for New York, I obviously did that. And then it became a sort of a big aha moment that, my goodness, just because I've got the New York bar exam doesn't mean I can work anywhere I want, because the legal system is so different and I've never lived anywhere but Seattle. And so it took a little while, and I was doing a lot of work experiences, internships, externships to sort of learn about the law and make connections and understand different issues. And it was at that time, my law license and all of the things that needed to happen to work all came together at the same time. And when I started to look for a job, I realized, oh goodness, this is not going to be easy. But I had essentially put myself out there a lot, with a lot of volunteer work, and I was meeting people. And the first one came from a nonprofit saying, we've got a position, you should apply. And I already knew I didn't want to do immigration. In fact, the funny story is I knew I wasn't going to do immigration work. So I had signed up with a temp agency, and I said, they said, what do you want to do? I said, well, I'm never going to do immigration. Put me in something immigration, because I'm never going to meet these people again. And the terminology in the law is different too. So in the UK, a legal assistant is generally a paralegal. A legal assistant in the US is essentially a secretary. And so at this temp agency, they sent me to an immigration department and a law firm as a legal assistant. And I was just very happy to be out of the house. My husband, who's a lawyer as well, used to, I just realized after, dating and then getting married, realizing how many hours he works. He's working all the hours, and I'm a newlywed. I've got, he's my only person. And so I was happy to get out of the house and get any job. And I said yes to being a legal assistant at the law firm. But it was one day there, and I realized I'm going to be photocopying all day. So I stomped my way home, and I'm like, husband, I'm a secretary.
How did this happen?
And he's like, it's okay, I still love you. And the next day I got a job offer in immigration, and I thought, I'll just do this. I'll take this. That was my 5th immigration job, and I said, I'll do it. And so I went and told this other secretary who was teaching me how to be a secretary. And I said, I'm going to be an immigration lawyer tomorrow or next week. And she went and told on me. And then the managing partner of that department summoned me in and said, I'm so sorry, you can't be here anymore. You're going to be an immigration lawyer next week. So I was sort of escorted out of the department. And what's funny is nobody knew me. I was so happy that I was a secretary. Nobody knew me because these people became my colleagues. And there was one person who was so kind. Those people that are so nice to the waitresses at restaurants and they pay attention. This was that kind of guy. And he was so kind. But he's the only person who really remembered me from those secretarial days. So I had lunch with him not so long ago, and we just had a big laugh. He's like, you were with us for a hot minute, and then you've done all of this. It's that was essentially the journey of I didn't want to be an immigration lawyer, but the universe of immigration kept pulling me in until I said, okay, I succumb.
And I have to assume your husband is not an immigration lawyer.
That's correct. Yes, he's not an immigration lawyer.
About that. So, one of the cool things is when you became an immigration lawyer, you worked at a firm then, right? And you got hired for them. Mm-hmm. At some point, you worked there for X amount of time, and you're like, you know what? Why am I giving them 70% of this? I should do this on my own. So you went there for a certain amount of time. Did you go in there thinking you'd go on your own, or you went there thinking you'd climb that corporate ladder in that firm? You recall?
Yes, it's an interesting story, actually. It's slightly different. So,
love a good story.
Yeah, my own immigration lawyer was going through some life changes. And when all of my issues came together and I could work, she was like, well, why don't you work with me? Why don't you become a partner? And to me, partnership sounds amazing. And, again, I don't know any different. And this is a job. And so be it, it's immigration, but it's a job. And I said, yes. And I very quickly learned that a law firm is a business and somebody has to run the business. And this person was not the right person who knew how to run a business because she was going through life changes that propelled her to run a business that she didn't know how to run. She was a very good lawyer. And so, interestingly enough, our bookkeeper one day summoned us. And I'm very new. I have no idea about any of these things. They've summoned us, and the bookkeeper's like, well, you guys are not sending invoices out and you're not doing any of this right, and you owe us more money. And the more you do wrong and incorrectly, the more work it is for us to fix it. So we need to teach you how to do this. So I learned how to do bookkeeping from our bookkeeper because my partner wasn't doing it right. And I very quickly learned that to pay bills, whether it's the electricity or the rent for the office, somebody needs to do the work and invoice and all the things that you're supposed to do. I thought I was going to be learning from this person. I didn't. And it was really a year and a half later when I realized this couldn't work, but I was too scared to do anything else when my husband said, just go and try this on your own. And if you fail, I'll still love you. And that was the beginning of the rest of my life.
Isn't it funny? In school, like, even if you weren't just immigrated here, the same challenges face anybody who wants to be an entrepreneur. We don't know. There's nobody teaching anybody how to do it. It's like this secret that is not out. I mean, there's a lot of things today. You can find a lot of things. But back in the day, you're on an island by yourself. And your experience of like, I don't even know how to do this is the same as somebody else that goes on their own. They don't know what to do. It's the hardest thing ever. And thank God we have more tools today to do that. But that what got you saying, hey, going to go on my own? And because if I'm going to do it, I might as well do it for myself. I assume that's what happened. And then I suspect at that point, you're like, here's a nice niche I could be in. Because now I've been through the whole process. I've navigated the whole thing. I could do a lot of good for a few people instead of a little good for a lot of people.
You've touched on something very interesting, because I think a lot of lawyers probably feel the same, in that you've learned the academia and academic part of it, but nobody, or like an accountant, nobody's really told you how to run a business. And in the UK, as I mentioned earlier, there are the two tracks. There's the transactional lawyer and the trial lawyer. The transactional lawyers are actually taught some of these things at school, but not the trial lawyer. They're not taught that. So all of what we had to learn was how to stand on your feet and, argue and negotiate and all of, be in court. But when I moved here, I had to learn trial by fire, so to speak, as I just mentioned. But what was interesting is I still wanted to practice immigration law. And the first, as I mentioned earlier, that I was like, why was I fighting this? This immigration is a fast moving area, not as fast. It wasn't as fast then as it is now, of course. But it was, I could see the impact on somebody's life, within a reasonable amount of time. And all of it's complicated. Where do you file? And what is the legality of this and eligibility of it? And then how to bill for that. And as I'm learning all of these things, I opened my own doors to Watson Immigration Law, January 1, 2009. But if you can cast your memory back to 2008 and 9, it really was the beginning or similar scenarios to what we saw in 2021 and 2022. The recession, people being laid off. And I had just opened my doors, and living in Seattle, where the headquarters of Microsoft and big companies are here, people were being laid off. Immigrants, high-skilled immigrants were being laid off. So number one, I was a little scared to open my own doors because I didn't know what to expect, but I was going with the flow. And we had this economic situation happening that was propelling people to call my phone. And what transpired over and over again was these high-skilled immigrants who had a desire to be entrepreneurs, but were not necessarily ready to be entrepreneurs because they had a steady paycheck with families and mortgages to pay. But if you are a high-skilled immigrant and you don't have valid employment, you are now unlawfully in the United States. And so the calls that I got were basically saying, I want my own startup. Help me get a visa for my startup. So as I was learning how to run my own business, it's almost like, I don't know if you've heard this sort of saying that if you want to learn about how to nurture a newborn baby, go to a mother of a newborn baby, because a teenager mom has forgotten all of those things. I had just started my business, and I'm still learning that there are quarterly taxes to pay and invoices. And, that learning doesn't go away even after 21 years. But those people who are just trying to get on the ladder while navigating the immigration minefield became a natural sort of connection for me. I could understand them. They could sort of relate to me. And I think that connection helped me sort of get. One of the things I said to a client once is they came to me and said, well, that's my dream. And I realized in that moment, gosh, all these dreams that I had were coming together in America. That's the American dream. Oh my gosh, I'm living the American dream. Oh my gosh, each of these people who have ever uttered the word dream, I've got to even push myself harder to make their dreams come true. Yep. And so that entrepreneurship angle from my own perspective, but also the client's perspective, really propelled my own career. It started this trajectory that I didn't know I would be following.
So the immigration law for entrepreneurs are these folks that are coming here on a temporary work basis, or are these going to become citizens and become entrepreneurs, or is it both that you work with?
It can be both.
Okay.
But the trajectory, if you like, it could be threefold. Number one, international students come here. They often do these, entrepreneurship classes and then go into cohorts, and then they have these ideas. They need a visa for, running their startup. That's one category. The other category is you've been at Microsoft for 10 years, but you have this burning desire to be an entrepreneur. You wait for your green card and then you become an entrepreneur. You don't necessarily need me at that point. You've got a green card and you're all set. But what if you're that Microsoft person waiting for that green card? You're in a line to get a green card. There's no real line. It's sort of invisible. But now you've been laid off. And you're sort of compelled to take that step. And a lot of my clients are like that. And the third prong is that people who are very successful outside the United States see the opportunity that America can bring their businesses to themselves, and they expand into the US. So I do a lot of US expansion work as well.
Well, who knew there was all those different kinds of ways you can do that? And it's funny, the one that probably sticks, that's probably the most urgent, is probably somebody who has been here, fully assimilated, doing their thing, living the dream, and then they lose their job, and they're going to be gone if they're not gainfully employed. That's probably the most urgent, I'm guessing, that needs the help the most, right?
Absolutely. And this is what really put me on the map. Because in 2008 and 2009, when I saw the gap in the immigration system, so our immigration system is from the 1950s and 60s, and the most recent update was in 1990, which established all the visa categories that we have. So you've probably heard about O visa, H-1B visa, etc. But there was never a startup visa. So in 2009, when I started to work with these entrepreneurs, they were aspiring entrepreneurs, and then I helped them get there. I started to write about it. Why don't we have a visa for startups? And what was very interesting is a lot of VCs and angel investors, people who are investing in high-skilled immigrants, could also see the problem. And so they were advocating in their own silo. And I was doing what I was doing. And around 2010 was the first time Congress had a bill called the Startup Visa Bill. And it was a result of a lot of these advocacy groups that had come up from the VC world and the tech world, accelerators. And when I saw that bill, I was like, that's the answer. And so there was a merging of some of these people that came together, and I have been working with them since. Now a lot of people know about it, but as you might know, lawyers are often about billable time, but as an entrepreneur, I recognized, I had an aha moment one day, I could actually help make law. It's not just about lawyering. It's about the impact I can have and be the voice for the people who need a pathway and don't have it. So that became, honestly, one of the propellers of my career to this day. And I've written so much. Now I have books. My first book was called The Startup Visa. The series is called The Startup Visa. And it was really inspired by a client of mine who is a VC, who became a VC and is one of the earliest VCs in Africa. And he said, Tahmina, you have so much content. You should just write a book. I'm like, oh, yes, I should write a book. And, I've never written a book before. I just had this false notion that I have so much content. It's a book already. It's only when I started writing it that I realized, content on a blog or articles written at different times for different audience doesn't gel and become a book together. But it really did start the book authorship journey for me. And eventually, I did have a publisher initially. It was a well-known VC who had a publishing company, but they said to me, we'll write this book. Of course, we'll publish this book. Of course, this is right up our alley, but it will be an ebook only. And I realized, if I'm going to speak to a senator or a congressperson, I'm going to walk away with the book in their hands, and an ebook is not going to do it. Nope. That's how I became a self-published author. And it really started my authorship journey.
It's so funny. Entrepreneurs, they're just like, they see opportunity, and instead of going, oh, that looks hard, they're like, I can do that. I can do that. Let's fix that.
Really? I was like, well, how much free time did she really have?
She had no free time. Zero. And that's the cool part about it. And again, it seems like you get to pick and choose, probably now more than you did before. Not that it would matter, but you get to pick and choose your clientele to say, man, this person, man, they got it. I'm going to help them. They are going to make a difference. They're here to be the best version of themselves, to help the country do the things wherever that immigration would be at. And versus somebody just like, hey, I just need to get in and I'm going to say I'm doing this, but I'm really not. You probably can disintegrate that pretty quickly when you look at a client, probably. Because it's got to be.
I'm very lucky at this stage. People that I want to work with find me, and it's mutually, a mutual loving relationship. Because I say to my clients that we're a team. You know your business, you know your thing. I know the law, and when that meeting of the mind happens, it becomes electric in the work that you can do. And so I'm privileged enough to be able to do that, but I'm also very grateful and lucky that the right people find me.
So did you build a team, or 2008, 2009? At what point do you build a team? Have you built a team? How did you go about building your team?
Well, yeah, I love all the questions you're asking, because, this is the stuff that people don't necessarily know. It's sort of under the hood. It takes a long time. Again, nobody teaches you how to be an entrepreneur. And suddenly you're like, I've got to do payroll. Where is the money coming from? And whether you pay yourself or not, just like the captain of the ship, you sink last, and so I initially had a paralegal with my previous partner, and that paralegal was full-time. And when we became two firms, I had that paralegal for 2 days a week. And one of the things that my ex-partner said to me was, you eat what you kill. And what was so interesting about that, not that I really understood it, but I took it to heart, that I've got to be out there. I've got to be out there, making sure that people know that I can help them. But she had 13 years of experience and I had 0. And so when calls would come in, people would naturally be calling, wanting to speak with her. But the work didn't necessarily trickle down to me. I was bringing the work in, but she was taking the work. So when I started my own firm, I didn't realize how much work was coming in under my name. And so I had this person for 2 days a week, and I very quickly realized, gosh, I need another day. But I did it very cautiously. And the ex-partner said, okay, you can have her for 3 days a week, because she obviously realized that the work was not coming in for her. And when I said, okay, I think I need her for 4 days a week. And then she put her foot down saying, no, you can't. So then I was like, what do I do? But I'm too scared to have somebody else. I've got two, payrolls to do. And, eventually break through that. And I'm very, very, very lucky to have some incredible people on my team. We're not very big. We're about 8 or 9. And I now am using some remote team members as well. And so we're a small but mighty team. And what's really important to know is that each of these people are loving human beings. They love the work that they're doing. They really see the impact that the client is making in the universe. And we, together, we're dynamite.
So I have to know, did you get the paralegal for 4 days a week?
Eventually, she became full-time with me. She's no longer with me anymore. Life evolves, but yes. And the entrepreneurship fears don't ever go away. It's just it's a different level of fear and a different level of insecurities. But you push through each time, and you do it anyway, and you get to the next level. I think one of the interesting parts was I had an opportunity to do a radio show. Everything that I've done is I've said yes to something scary. And one of them was doing a radio show. And it was a live radio show. And I said to the person, gosh, I'm just a lawyer. What am I going to do? And he said, no, Tahmina, you just tell people what they need to know. Each editor, each person that's come into my life has sort of shown me why my voice is important. But when I was doing the live radio show, I was petrified. I was just learning about, I forget what those circles are called. I was sort of really, really outside of that zone. And when I did my first radio show, or the second one, I thought, no, I can do this. I can do this. And I realized I had conquered a huge fear. And that radio show was live for 2 years, which became my podcast. And then I had a second podcast. And believe it or not, as life would have it, I'm doing that same live radio show. It's a different station that just kicked off last week.
Always say yes, because it's never as hard as we think it's going to be. But to your one point about when you're an entrepreneur, there's really those 3 core buckets. We are like, you're going to do the business of being an attorney, but you have to run a business that can support being an attorney. And then you have to go grow the business and be the marketing person to go bring in business. So you have to somebody has to do all 3. And when you first start out, you don't know which one. You don't even know. You think you're going to just be an attorney, but it's like, no, you end up doing a less attorney work and more running the business and, making rain than you are doing legal work. Probably at some point you have your team doing all these things.
Well, I have to say, the legal work doesn't stop. And at the moment, I'm still the only lawyer. I've had throughout these years, I've had lawyers off and on, and it's like any business. So at the moment, I'm the only lawyer, but I do have an amazing legal team. But what I was going to say is, nowadays I get bombarded with coaches, like law firm coaching. And, immigration law is volatile and controversial. And with any business, there's ups and downs. And do you do this or do you not do this? And I want to say a few years ago, when I was thinking, well, how long am I going to do this? Can I do it this way? I suddenly had to talk to myself and be my own coach and say, well, I've kept a business alive for 18, 19 years. There's something to be said about that, you know?
Yeah.
And so am I happy? Success can be defined in so many different ways. It's what's your definition of success?
So what is your definition?
I bet I know it. But
I don't know. I'm still figuring it out. You tell me what you think it is.
I know exactly what it is. Your definition of success, this is bigger than you. You're helping other what kind of word is that? You're helping other people achieve their dreams. And that's way more satisfying. Your dream's doing just fine, but you're helping others. And that is why you do what you do. I mean, that's the success that you're having.
You've hit it on the nail, and immigration lawyers in this moment are actually asking the same question of themselves over and over again. While there are big immigration law firms, a lot of people who do humanitarian immigration work are often entrepreneurs too. But the work of immigration law has never been more stressful. And how do you sustain yourself in work like this? So I think in this era of my practice, this era of my business, it's become very important to me to make sure that I am happy in my heart and my soul, and I can do this as stressful as it is. I can continue to do this with love. But you've got to inject love in yourself. Otherwise, you can't do that. And how do you do that? You've got to find it. It's not just by picking an apple from a tree. That's not how it happens. It's a journey. And I've been on that journey. And my journey has led me to birding, bird photography. And it's the thing that keeps me sane and keeps me alive and excited and curious. And because I have something that's not purely work anymore, I mean, again, I don't have a lot of spare time, but I can inject those moments in it that allows me to do this stressful work and sort of figure out how to keep doing it.
Can I ask a question? So if in everybody's career, whatever that is and whatever their business is, the stress, like, would you mind sharing with me what is the stress that you're under? What is causing you the stress? Is it because you want to do very well for your client, because you inherit their burden and you're trying to solve for that? Is it because the rules are changing, you don't want to lose your business? What is the stress that's causing you the most stress? What is that thing? You defined it?
Yeah. All of those things. And what I will say is, no matter what kind of business you run, you have that, just as you mentioned,
100%.
Glenn. And but in the immigration lawyering field, it is the burden of somebody's livelihood or their loved one. So the pressure is beyond high, and the expectation and the responsibility is very heavy. And that's on a good day. And when the rules are changing on you overnight and you don't know what to expect tomorrow and how you're going to be navigating that and how that's impacting your clients, it brings another element of stress. And just an example, these are people who are running businesses. So just an example of, there was a new fee of $100,000 on H-1Bs. I don't know if you are aware of it, earlier this year. And suddenly, whether you're the owner of the business who needs the H-1B or you're hiring people, you now have limitations, and that is impacting the bottom line of your business because you can't serve your customers. But just a story of just ongoing, this $100,000 on again, off again is making CEO think about decisions of, am I filing? Am I not filing? Can I file this way? Can I not file it this way? 2 weeks ago, we made a decision based on the 100,000 being on again. And now we have to pivot because it's off again. And this is somebody else's business where they have employees who also need payroll. So the pressure is pretty high. And up until I found bird photography, I didn't have a way to relieve the stress. And especially during the COVID years when immigration was pretty evolving with the times, but also now you've got COVID. So there are procedural lockdowns. It was probably the height of the stress. And you have to think about, obviously I've thought about closing my law firm down too. It's like you're very much at that peak of like, what am I going to do? And all of those are stressful,
I think though, like from my standpoint, and again, this is the woman's viewpoint over here, you're a feeler. And I think you feel every single person's burden, love, complication, whatever it is that walks through the door, you feel it and you own it. And I think if I could tie a ribbon on it, that's your stress. And the stress is you feel when the law changes because they feel that. And I think the birds bring you peace because they're just out there flying and being peaceful, and they're not feeling the stress that you're feeling, right? If I could like connect the dots, tie the bow, whatever that is, I just think you're a feeler, and that's what it comes down to.
You're not a transactional. At the big firms, everybody's just a number. They don't care, but you care. That's the bird you're carrying. And we know this because when we deal with our clientele, it's a very personal level that you want to do well for them, and you inherit all their problems and all their opportunities, and you feel responsible. You're not, but you feel that way for it. But you're just not a transactional person. You deeply want to help them, and that is a hell of a burden to carry. So who knew birds could be the thing? Thank God you found a thing. But if you stop caring, you won't be an effective attorney as you are, because then you're just going to, why would you even do it then? Because you don't have a passion for it.
So true. And there have been times where I said, I wish I could care less, but I simply cannot.
You simply cannot. That's not the way it's going to be. Welcome to being an entrepreneur that you care about your clients. Good luck with that. Tell everybody. Well, it's funny too. I wanted to go on a side note because immigration worldwide is such a whatever it is these days, and it seems like it's really it's either nationalism or the globalism. Like either it's opportunity or culture, and we're fighting this war between the different countries, different cultures of who should do what, where, and how. And it doesn't matter what side you're on. There's this massive war with these two things. I don't know the right answer. It's baby on my skill set, but you're kind of stuck in the middle of that where it doesn't matter. You're just trying to do this task and help this person in the current law to do this thing. You believe it to be true and you're doing it, but you're probably catching heat from all over because they don't even, it's not even fair that they're getting heat for that because you're just trying to do this thing that's in the law that you're trying to not exploit, but you're trying to help somebody out. But that would be, I think, a very hard thing to do. Again, for me, people hate the IRS, so they blame me. Well, I'm not the person making the tax law. I'm just helping you trying to figure it out, right? But you probably feel a little bit of that, correct? That it's not just the pressure of the person; it's everything.
For sure. And this year or 2025, the legal profession in general has felt a lot of pressure in the rule of law, being attacked. And so the legal system and the legal profession itself has felt it. So I feel it from that perspective. When the rules are changing and I'm trying to figure out what to do for clients and all of those things, that's it. But you can't help but also think about the bigger picture of the world and exactly what you just said, and add to that the wildfires that are around the world happening in Europe, not just the US. There is a huge displacement of human beings. What we really need is a world solution to immigration. And, it's beyond me at this point. I hope people who are going to the World Economic Forum are thinking about it and coming to conclusions and ideas that they can put out there. But we're all human beings. We're all connected. How do we find ways that everybody can be served? And there are ideas about, well, if you're displaced from this country, but this country needs this type of workers, why don't we find a way to solve that? The age-old discussion that's happened in the United States about immigration reform is who's picking our apples, who's doing all the agriculture work, who's actually serving the people who need home care, health care, nurses. It's much bigger than just running a law firm.
Mm-hmm. And ultimately, the only way we can navigate this is as entrepreneurs and just humans is we can only control what we can control. And all those things, as stressful as they are, that's beyond my skill set. I've got to focus on this task at hand. Going to be a good spouse, be a good parent, you be a good employer, take care of your clients, and take awesome pictures of birds. That's all you can control. Everything else, you can't do anything with that.
And it takes a long time to learn that, though. Because
Taking the pictures of birds, yeah, I know. That's hard.
Well, no, I think the nothing is in your control
Nothing.
realization takes a long time to really sort of land, because when you're an entrepreneur, you feel like you can fix things. You can go out there and talk about it. You can go and convince somebody else, but you realize nothing is in your control. Be happy with the little bit that you could do and just live your life in the way that, you know, is in the highest good of the people around you. But it takes a long time to come to that realization.
Well, you've learned, you said one thing earlier, and again, I was making fun of this birds because it's such a true thing. It's so relaxing because as an entrepreneur, you're just full throttle, go, 24/7. Our body's not made to that. We're made to peak and relax. We're not made to go steady, right? We like to peak and going down, and you can't go full tilt all the time. It just doesn't work. And so having that outlet where you can now realize this and maybe step back and maybe you can make that peak not so high and not so long, that would be ideal. But you can't, you're so good at what you do, I can't imagine you stopping it.
Wait,
So
don't
you
take away from my
okay,
question.
Go ahead. Oh, go ahead. Oh, yeah, you're up. This is your part now.
So we have one more question, and it's the hardest question of the whole podcast. But what is your end game?
Boom.
You know, I think about that a lot. You know, I always thought immigration was my one and only passion in what I wanted to do. But bird photography has opened up a life that I didn't know I could have. And I used to say no to a lot of international speaking opportunities. My kids are little, I mean, now they're teenagers, but I was avoiding it. Once I found photography, I was like, you know, invite me to speak in your country. I'll go and tell you everything you need to know about US immigration law, and I'll bring the birds back and share them everywhere. That has become true. And I now make coloring books out of my photography. The series is called Color Your Joy. And my new dream is to have a coloring book for every state and every country I visit. So my bird photography converts that way. So I would love to continue to figure out how I do maybe a little bit more of birding and a little bit less of law. I don't know if that will happen, but my end game is to figure out how to do them both and keep them combined. I have become a board member of the American Birding Association. I don't know how that happened. I said, yeah, initially I thought it was a joke. And then I got an invitation to be on another birding organization board. And they said to me, I said, how did you even find me? I'm a relatively new birder. And they said, well, we're just searching for lawyers and birders, and you're the only one who keeps coming up. So I don't know. I'm following the journey of life, and I'm trying to make sure that I keep joy and love as my North Star in whatever I do. And I'll keep going that way.
You answered it perfectly. There is no end game. You're just on the journey.
You're just going to keep going. You know, it's funny. Everybody has to do their entrepreneurial journey to support all the other cool stuff that it opens up for them to do. Because if you had like a real job and you would go in and go to do it and check out, you wouldn't have such a high or such a low. You probably wouldn't do birding. You'd probably do something else, and you wouldn't really find your true passion because you're not pushed to go find it. So we call that an enabler. When you're an entrepreneur, it enables you to do these other things that are way outside you would probably never have done birding if you weren't doing what you're doing today.
I love it. You know, it's such an aha moment for me. I don't know if I would have thought about it that way, but you guys have the entrepreneurship stuff like really nailed down. And
we're just winging it. Don't be bold over there.
This is so much fun.
I don't believe it.
So much fun. Well, we can't thank you enough for being on our show. I don't know if you want to give a plug to your company and book and your podcast for our listeners.
Coloring books.
Yeah,
my gosh. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about this. I don't always get to talk about the journey of of all that we chatted about. My law firm is watsonimmigrationlaw.com. If people are trying to start companies, investing in companies, trying to hire their, employees and growing, expanding into the US, I'm your woman for that. If you want to talk birds, I can talk your ear off. You can find a lot of my writing at my author website. That's tahminawatson.com. If you wanted to feast your eyes on beautiful, colorful birds, my photography website is tahmina-watson.pixels.com. But tahminawatson.com will have everything. And, I will just leave people with the fact that wellness is a really important part of entrepreneurship. But you don't get to think about it until you're on your knees, because you really just keep going and going and going until you realize you can't get up anymore. And then you're forced to find something. And that's how birding came to my life. And now I'm a big advocate for finding joy.
The trick question, do you know what the Ohio State bird is?
Goldfinch?
Cardinal.
Cardinal. No, I didn't know that.
Well, you won't forget it now.
You won't forget. And the famous bird is the snipe, if you ever look at that. We've got
yes.
Snipe hunting. So, yes. So
yeah. Well, thank you.
Well, Tahmina, thanks again for being on the show. Always appreciate a great guest. And I hope this was helpful for you as it was for us. Again, thank you all for joining us on the Empowering Entrepreneurs podcast. I'm Glenn Harper.
Julie Smith.